hit the mill. I fell behind on my bills.
While I agree it is completely unrealistic to compare Tesla to other car companies, it is absolutely fair and realistic to look at the three most recent world-changing companies who absolutely rule the world right now with game-changing technology, services, and products that are part of everyday life for everyone. Now, I'm not talking about the latest game-changing hype machine stock. I'm talking about world-changing companies that actually lived up to and blew away the hype and impact our daily lives today and really have been over the past 2 decades. With inclusion in the S&P 500 here, this represents the best way to answer the question of, is it time to sell Tesla stock or is it time to load up on Tesla stock? Despite all three being dominant and world-changing companies, all three had completely different stock trajectories over the past 20 years on their journey to world dominance. All three scenarios for these companies are completely plausible outcomes for how Tesla stock will perform and represent the three best examples of where Tesla stock will go from here. Where would we be without Microsoft coming around and becoming the behemoth that it is? Most governments, businesses, and homes around the world use Microsoft-driven products. When it comes to pure saturation around the world for anything computer related, it's Microsoft and no one else. Where would your work be without Excel, PowerPoint, and other products like that? I own all Apple products and have for over a decade, and I still call Apple's version of PowerPoint, PowerPoint. And I honestly don't even know what it's supposed to be called. Same with Apple versions of Excel or any of the other products that they have. You put together a PowerPoint, or you track things on an Excel spreadsheet. That's it. You don't use any other terms for that. But what about the stock? How has it performed? As Microsoft exploded, so did the entire tech sector into one of the biggest bubbles in history. But once that bubble popped, the leader, the biggest player, the biggest revenue generator, who was growing both their top and bottom lines immensely even after the bubble, traded for 17 years before finally passing their bubble highs. They weren't struggling. The stock just fell out of favor after the bubble and basically traded flat for 17 years as it had run up too much during the bubble. This is completely plausible for Tesla as well, that we see some dead years. Now, probably not 17 of them, I agree with that completely. But some dead years may be ahead if this EV bubble continues to run out so far ahead of all the revenues and basically ahead of everything. And before you say it cannot happen to Tesla, it already has. And before you say it's different now, it's actually not that much different, because the first run-up was based on the same future that is coming true today, but took longer to get there than expected. But that run-up happened for the same reason why it's running up today, on all the great things coming in the future. Just unfortunately, it took a lot longer to get there than what was expected at the time. There is no guarantee that the great innovations coming will get here in the time frames people are basing their stock price on. And there's no guarantee that it will generate the incredible revenue right off the bat. It may take a few years to get that revenue up to where it needs to be. And also keep in mind, if Elon wants to continue to take capital raises and expand the infrastructure, which he has proven he wants to do and has said he wants to do over and over again, that will hurt the stock growth in the short term while those are being implemented, but it is great for the company long term and exactly what you want to see. How patient investors will be in the years in between when all this is happening will determine if Tesla goes down this route or not. Apple was in the same spot as Microsoft, with a huge bubble popping and everyone taking a beating afterwards. But unlike Microsoft, Apple did not trade sideways for years. It just continued being the growth monster, returning a ridiculous amount in the 20 years since the bubble popped. With world-changing innovations like the iPod, followed by the iPhone, and so on, Apple has continued to push out game-changing products that not only are adopted immediately, but are highly profitable. Add in their continued growth in services and digital media that are even more profitable than the hardware they sell, and it's a recipe for unlimited growth to the bottom line and continued adoption of everyone doing everything within the Apple ecosystem. So although Tesla is the big dog of the group just like Microsoft was at the time of the tech bubble popping, Tesla is the best innovator of the group like Apple was post-bubble. So it is feasible that it could go on a run like Apple did post-bubble and just continue to rack up incredible gains in stock price year over year and decade after decade. Tesla is also so diversified in their portfolio of products, and most of those projects are just in their infancy and will be incredible gainers as they move forward, that opens a whole new avenue for growth. And I do think there are many game-changing projects coming in the future that will continue to be the catalyst that could propel this stock to this ridiculous growth levels it has been enjoying over the past year. Remember, we aren't hearing everything they're working on. I guarantee Elon has secrets. Even the death of Steve Jobs could not slow down the beast that is Apple, and as Tesla grows and takes on the best talent, that same structure could be in place to propel Tesla forward for decades to come and to mimic or even beat the performance of Apple from 2000 to 2020. Amazon went from online book retailer to basically selling everything you could ever want in one place, delivered to your door in a day, and cheaper than most places could give it to you in the first place. They have been putting many retail businesses out of business for over a decade now, and every new line of business they enter is almost immediately a rounding success. And by the looks of it, they have no plans to ever stop expanding. And since its inception, Amazon has always been overvalued or traded too richly for the average investor using traditional metrics. When it was $50 a share, it was overvalued. When it was $500 a share, it was overvalued. And at $3,000 a share, it's still considered overvalued. But is a stock really overvalued if it continues to perform at the valuation level it's at for decades? And even more importantly, those that were waiting for the stock to hit a more traditional valuation like Apple are still waiting after 30 years. At what point do you just adjust your model and say it will never get down to those traditional levels? World changing? Yes. Dominating in a space where everyone said it was impossible for an online retailer to dominate? Absolutely. Continuing to innovate and get better? Yep, it checks that box too. So does any of this, from being overvalued to continued innovation and dominance in their niche, and starting to expand into larger areas and dominating those too, sound like a familiar story for Tesla? So which case is most likely to occur with Tesla? For me, I believe Tesla will track somewhere in between Amazon and Apple, and let me tell you why. Remember, we are discussing Apple and Amazon from 2000 to 2020, not Apple and Amazon now versus Tesla moving forward. I believe Tesla will grow revenues like Apple did, but the bottom line will be closer to what Amazon did. And that's really for one simple reason. No matter which line of business you think will propel Tesla's revenue the most in the future, there is no doubt that Tesla's overall revenue generating capacity will be more capital intensive businesses than Apple's was overall. Anything related to autonomous? That's capital intensive. Solar? Capital intensive. All the energy grid stuff? That's capital intensive. All of that mimics more of Amazon in terms of the capital expenditures involved when compared to Apple. And yes, I agree completely. I think Tesla will find ways to improve margins better than Amazon can ever dream of. But with all the factories being owned by Tesla and just their lines of business overall being huge capital expenses to operate, it just cannot match the margins of Apple. Bottom line, Tesla will always be considered overvalued and like Amazon, will never reach a traditional valuation number. But I think Tesla grows much better than Amazon stock did, but it may not reach the growth Apple had in the 2000s based on the amount of money that will flow to capital-intensive projects that Tesla is unveiling now and will unveil in the future. Will it be a bumpy ride along the way? Well, it was for everyone else, but in the long term, it will be a glorious future.